All right, we'll start off with some travel updates from our senior officials. The Secretary General is in Apia in Samoa, and where he told journalists, like many Pacific islands, Samoa is caught in a storm of rising prices, rising seas, and rising geopolitical tensions. All of this compounded by an ailing ocean and woefully insufficient finance. These challenges demand a resolute international action. The climate crisis is the gravest threat facing this country and this region, and quite possibly the world. Mr. Guterres noted that the region contributes only 0.02% of global emissions, and yet it's on the front lines of the climate crisis, dealing with extreme weather events from raging tropical cyclones to record ocean heat waves. The Secretary General called on G20 countries, who are the biggest group of emitters, to act by phasing out fossil fuels fairly and ending fossil fuel expansion immediately. The United Nations, he says, stands with the Pacific countries in calling for justice and change. His remarks were shared with you. And earlier today, he also visited a district in Samoa which has been impacted by sea level rise, storms, and the 2022 tsunami. He heard from members of communities that have been forced to move inland due to sea level rise, also visited a seawall that had been rebuilt 3 times in the past 20 years, noting that this is a sign of determination and strength of Samoan people to fight climate change. The Secretary General also met with the Prime Minister of Samoa, Fiami no Mataafa, and discussed the impacts of climate change on the country, the reform of the international financial system, and the forthcoming Pacific Island Forum, which the Secretary General will attend. Tomorrow, he will meet with civil society representatives, including women and youth, before he heads up to Auckland, New Zealand, and then where he's scheduled to meet with the Prime Minister there, and then on to Tonga for that Pacific Island Forum. Meanwhile, our Deputy Secretary General is in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, speaking at the opening of ceremony of the World Women's Forum. Amina Mohammed emphasized that building a world free of inequality for women and girls is not just an ideal, it is our collective responsibility. She said it is also crucial for addressing the most pressing issues of our time, including climate change and poverty. Ms. Mohammed also stressed that the World's Women's Forum is a timely gathering to chart a path towards the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, where progress on the implementation of the Beijing Platform for the Beijing Platform for Action will be assessed. Throughout the day, she held bilateral meetings, including with the president of Mongolia. She also met with the chairman of the parliament and members of the Senate, as well as several female members of parliament. They discussed the cooperation between the United Nations and Mongolia and actions to accelerate progress towards the SDGs. On the sidelines of her trip, the Deputy Secretary General also held bilateral meetings with the President of Slovenia, Turkey's Minister for Family and Social Services, and additionally, she met with the UN country team and participated in a town hall meeting with UN staff. This morning, you heard the Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Tor Veneslan, brief the Security Council. He told members, he stressed to members that the immediate ceasefire is needed and a political horizon must be reestablished that will end the occupation and achieve a two-state solution based on the pre-1967 lines, where Jerusalem is the capital of both. Mr. Veneslan referred to the developments across the Blue Line and beyond, warning that any spark or miscalculation could set off a series of uncontrollable actions. He underscored that the UN remains committed and ready to scale up the humanitarian assistance in Gaza during the ceasefire and supporting the implementation of the deal. From the ground, our colleague Mohanad Hadi, the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, today noted there's been an average of 1 evacuation order every 2 days this month, forcing as many as 250,000 Palestinians to uproot their lives yet again. In a statement, Mr. Hadi said these evacuation orders are meant to protect civilians. They are in fact doing the exact opposite. They are forcing families to flee again, often under fire and with few belongings that they can carry with them, into an ever-shrinking area that is overcrowded, that is polluted, that is lacking services, and like the rest of Gaza, that is unsafe. The impact on our work is also immense. Many of our humanitarian colleagues have been forced to move because of these directives, which affect their premises, warehouses, and other facilities. Alongside the people of Gaza, we and our humanitarian partners are reaching the point of having no place to go. Our colleague Gilles Michaud, the Undersecretary General for Safety and Security, says that these mass evacuations are the latest in the long list of unbearable threats to UN personnel working in Gaza. He added that the UN and humanitarian facilities and guest houses are in areas that are affected by the most recent evacuation orders, with crucial UN security infrastructure in adjacent areas. He stressed that we need a safe space from which to operate and a safe space from which we can deliver life-saving assistance. For example, I give you, in terms of our shrinking space, the World Food Program has now lost access to its warehouse in the Deir el-Balah area in central Gaza. This was the third and last operational warehouse in Gaza's middle area. 5 community kitchens operated by WFP have also been evacuated as the agency seeks new locations from them. According to OCHA, latest update on the humanitarian response in Gaza, multiple evacuation orders for Khan Yunis and Deir el-Balah issued between the 8th of August and the 17th have alone deprived people of essential services. In total, 17 health facilities were affected, with the area impacted by the orders located 1 kilometer or less from 4 key hospitals. With diseases spreading in Gaza, access to health services and to safe drinking water is especially critical. There's also a shortage of chlorine for water disinfection, with reserves expected to last for just 1 more month. Given the presence of hepatitis A and now polio in Gaza, this is, of course, deeply alarming. Despite this and other challenges, including active hostilities, ongoing insecurity, and access constraints, we and our humanitarian organizations continue to do everything possible to provide life-saving health care to Palestinians in Gaza. In the 2 weeks prior to August 18th, nearly 36 health partners reached some 337,000 civilians across Gaza. Meanwhile, 16 emergency medical teams are supporting local healthcare workforce. Meanwhile, in northern Gaza, kitchens supported by WFP are providing hot meals. This is the first delivery since, this first delivery last week is part of WFP's efforts to ensure that nutritious produce can supplement the emergency food rations that families have been surviving on for months. So far in August, bakeries in Gaza supported by the World Food Program have produced about 1.9 million bread bundles. That's nearly 4 metric tons of bread. Out of 18 bakeries, a dozen are still operational. Moving north, our UNIFIL colleagues tell us that the situation along the Blue Line remains very tense, with daily exchanges of fire that have left destruction and claimed lives on both sides of the Blue Line. As part of their support to the communities in areas impacted by exchanges of fire, UNIFIL peacekeepers, in collaborations with NGOs, hosted a health campaign for women in Souk el-Khan in southern Lebanon. The campaign aims to support women in the conflict-affected areas by providing essential services, including cancer awareness sessions and personalized healthcare consultations. Quick update from Hans Grunberg, our special envoy for Yemen, who today held discussions with the Saudi ambassador to Yemen, Mohammed al-Jaber. Those discussions took place in Riyadh, the Saudi capital. Their discussions focused on the de-escalation efforts in Yemen amidst regional tensions. Separately, he also met in Riyadh with the ambassadors of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. He underscored the critical need for a unified approach to support efforts towards a political process and a ceasefire in Yemen. He also emphasized the importance of sustained advocacy for the release of the detained United Nations personnel, some of whom have been detained for a long, long time. The Office of the Special Envoy for Yemen stressed that while we continue to work and advocate for the release of the detainees, our work for peace in Yemen continues relentlessly. Moving back to this hemisphere and Haiti, a humanitarian update for Haiti, which we haven't shared with you in a while. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that persistent underfunding for the humanitarian response amidst growing needs and rising violence means that millions of Haitians are missing out on the essential support they need. Stepped up and sustained funding is needed to stem the deepening humanitarian crisis in the country. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that displacement has nearly tripled in the last 12 months, with more than 578,000 people having fled their homes in search of safety. Half of the newly displaced escaped the capital, Port-au-Prince, to the southern part of the country. Some 5 million people, that's half of the population of Haiti, are not getting enough to eat. Many lack access to health care they need, with just 1 in 4 hospitals in the country still functioning. Nearly 1.5 million children have seen their education disrupted over the past school year, while hundreds of thousands of out-of-school children face the risk of being recruited by armed gangs. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that without additional funding, Haiti's humanitarian crisis will grow only more severe. 8 months into the year, the 2024 humanitarian appeal, which calls for 674 million United States dollars, is just over a third funded, with only $227 million in the bank. This is the same low level of funding we've seen for the humanitarian response in Haiti over the past 5 years, a country where the needs have increased substantially during that period of time. Our humanitarian colleagues stress that while additional resources are urgently needed to stem a crisis, it is critical to find sustainable solutions to the humanitarian development, security, and other challenges faced by Haiti. And our colleagues at UNICEF today warned that children and vulnerable communities are facing the worst impacts of the expanding outbreak of Mpox in Eastern and Southern Africa. As you will recall, cases have been detected across 5 countries. That's Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, and South Africa, with the new variant of the virus identified in all except in South Africa. UNICEF says Burundi is currently reporting the region's highest number of Mpox infections, with children and adolescents below 20 years of age making about 60% of the cases detected. The risk to children in Burundi, it was heightened because of the simultaneous occurrence of measles outbreaks. UNICEF currently appealing for $16.5 million to scale up its response. Today is the International Day for the commemoration of victims of acts of violence based on religion or belief. In a message for the day, the Secretary General said around the world, individual communities faced violence based on religion or belief, stressing that we must urgently combat this scourge. The Secretary General urges all to reaffirm our commitment to creating a world where everyone can live free from fear, from stigma and persecution, calling on governments to protect all people and places of worship, implement comprehensive and anti-discrimination laws, and invest in education initiatives that foster inclusion and equal rights. Lastly, we have a new resident coordinator, and that is Yeşim Oruç of Turkey, who's taken up her post as a new resident coordinator in Moldova. She starts today. She brings more than 25 years of experience in development. Previously, she served as the resident coordinator for the UN in Guyana, and as well as other senior positions with UNDP in the United States, Albania, and Romania. And she holds a master's degree from the American University of Cairo and a bachelor's from Yale. Not bad. Congratulations. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Thailand reported the first case of Mpox in Asia today.
Yeah.
That goes after the one in Sweden and Europe. Is the Secretary General concerned about now the apparent global spread of this disease?
Indeed, indeed he is, and I think while our WHO colleagues have been very clear in not saying this is exactly like the spread of COVID, I think there are lessons that we need to internalize on how we deal with global outbreaks, including solidarity, early action, and funding for medical support.
And on Haiti, is there any way we can get a timetable on the deployment of police that have been promised to the Kenya mission?
That
Because
is-
this has dragged on for quite a while now.
I will not argue with you, Edie, on that point. Not that I ever want to argue with you. But I think those are questions that have to be asked of the support mission through Kenya, and we have I think we have some contacts for you we can share, but that's not an answer we can provide. Amélie.
Thanks, Steph. I have two questions. Ambassador Manso in the Security Council just said that he extended to the Secretary General an invitation to join President Abbas, who said he wants to go to Gaza. So, are you considering this invitation?
Let me check what has been received.
Okay. And second question, if I may, on Sudan, is there any more trucks that cross the Adre crossing point?
No updates for you on Sudan, though the need for greater humanitarian access and especially for more aid to come in remains very much critical in the top of our efforts. Senor.
Hi, Steph. I have been absent for the last days or weeks, so forgive me.
But I know you've read the transcript of the briefings you've missed, so you don't ask questions that have been asked. But go ahead.
On Venezuela,
Yeah.
given the total blockage of the situation, there are some international efforts of mediation between the parties. Is the UN involved somehow in these efforts? And if requested by any of the parties, is the UN ready to take part in an initiative of mediation?
Let me check on our involvement. So far, as always, our good officers are available should all parties involved agree and request. Abdelhamid, we're going to move from
Thank you.
left to right or right to left, depending where you're sitting.
Thank you, Steph. First, there was an attack on an UNRWA school last night. Number of children were burned to death. Lazzarini mentioned something, but nothing from your side, from the Secretary
Well,
General.
I mean, Philippe Lazzarini and ourselves are on the same side. So we echo
but such an attack-
we echo his calls and his outrage.
Oh, my second question. The Israeli ambassador accused the Palestinian ambassador of being a terrorist in a suit. Is that acceptable behavior from a diplomat?
I will not comment on what ambassadors and representatives say to each other within the legislative halls.
I noticed also the speech of Mr. Tor Wensland. He kept talking about war in Gaza. He didn't mention like atrocities committed in Gaza, or it's a killing machine in Gaza. It's not a war between two parties.
What
So,
is the-
and
what
he
is the
also,
question?
when he spoke about Jet, that town which settlers destroyed it, he didn't condemn that attack in his speech.
He has condemned it. I mean, we've spoken out against all the violence that civilians have suffered in Gaza. So I mean, he has done it. Benny.
This is on a slightly different area. There was an attack on a ship, Greek-flagged ship in the Red Sea. It's a tanker. There are fish in the sea. There's an environmental.
I mean, I think Edie asked that question yesterday about the Greek tanker that was floating on, but I'm happy to repeat my answer.
Oh, I might have missed it, but the question is there any, because of the environmental situation, anything from your end?
You know, it just highlights the multifaceted risk that continues to rise as ships are continuing to be targeted by Houthis in the region. The impact can be is commercial on global commerce. The impact can be environmental. A lot of oil flows through. The Red Sea in that area is home to an amazing biodiversity, which is a risk, and there's a physical risk, obviously, to the seafarers that are on these ships.
Yeah, and on that visit to
Yeah.
Gaza that people mentioned. It is a war zone. Most diplomats are unarmed. If a visit like that happens, can the UN supply some kind of security? Is there any way to secure such a visit?
I'm not going to speculate how such a visit could happen if it does happen, but the Secretary General has visited war zones before. We've been in Ukraine. He was in Kyiv when missiles landed not far from the place where we were. As always, the security needs to be. We handle it, but we handle parts of it. But it has to be assured with those who control the area where we visit. But I'm not going to speculate on the specifics of a Gaza visit. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Afghanistan's Taliban rulers have issued new bans on women's voices being heard and their faces being bared in public. Those are only a few. Does the Secretary General have any comment?
Beyond, of course, condemning any and such decisions, it's hard to imagine any country moving forward, developing, improving its situation with such orders in place. Abdelhamid, and
I have two questions. One's on the definition of terrorism, because you were asked this question yesterday. The GA did not agree on the definition for three reasons, as one of them is liberation movement versus terrorism and root causes. And the third, that many countries insisted to include in the definition state-sponsored terrorism. Is what Israel is doing, isn't that fit that category of definition?
we continue, and we have, and will continue to denounce acts of terrorism. The definition of terrorism, as you pointed out, and as Benny, I think, pointed out yesterday, is still not agreed to by member states.
My second question, the ambassador said there is no famine in Gaza. That's what he said. All UN organization and humanitarian representative in Gaza indicate there is famine in Gaza. So who's saying the truth? The UN
I will
or
let
the
you
ambassador?
and all the other journalists do the compare and contrast. We have spoken about the hunger situation in Gaza, and we stand by what we've said. Yes, please.
Thank you, Stefan. Can I have your comment on the Secretary General's report on development in science, technology, and potential impact on international security?
Well, I mean, I think that the Secretary General lays out in very stark terms in his report his deep concerns about the increasing reports we're seeing of AI possibly being used in a military context, notably in a nuclear context, especially when it comes to command and control, and all sorts of other issues, which should frankly raise a number of alarm bells. For us, it's very important that member states discuss all the ways to mitigate these risks in multilateral context. And in fact, the Summit of the Future is an opportunity for member states to take strong and visionary action on these issues.
So in this recommendation, it said, the member states recommending to member states to identify multilateral forum. What kind of forum that will be? And
Well, I mean, the Summit of the Future is clearly one of those. It is the most, in terms of the calendar, is the one that is upcoming. But there are many different forums within the UN that could serve, and also multi-stakeholders meetings. Okay. Oh, yes, Sarah.
This is regarding Indian Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine tomorrow after his visit to Russia earlier on. Would you have any comments on that, please?
No specific comment. I mean, we've seen a lot of heads of states and government travel to the region. We hope that all of these visits will bring us closer to an end of the conflict, in line with General Assembly resolutions, international law, and the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Thank you.